I never believed in strange things, but after what happened in a small town, I changed my mind. At first, the city seemed peaceful, with houses spaced apart and dirt roads. I had always lived in the big city, but I wanted some time away from the noise. A friend invited me to stay at his property in the countryside of Minas Gerais, where he had a farm that he inherited from his grandparents. The farm was a 30-minute drive from the nearest city. When I arrived, I was impressed by how peaceful the place was. The green hills and open sky were beautiful, but they also left me feeling a little lonely. The people in the city were friendly, but I noticed that they looked at me in a strange way, as if they knew something that I didn't. In the first few days, I enjoyed the peace. The farm was large and the nights were silent, with only the sound of crickets and the wind. I read, walked, and slept well. But as the days went by, I began to notice strange things. One night, while I was on the porch, I heard a noise that I couldn't identify. It sounded like something moving in the bushes, followed by a barely audible whisper. I tried to ignore it, thinking it was the wind or an animal, but the next night I heard it again. The noise was coming from the same place. I grabbed a flashlight and went to investigate. When I got closer, the noise stopped and there was total silence. The darkness seemed thicker and I felt uncomfortable, so I went back home. Over the next few days, I noticed that some things were out of place when I woke up. Objects that I had left in one corner would appear in other places, as if someone had been moving them while I was sleeping. I tried to think that it was just a distraction, but the feeling of being watched grew stronger. One afternoon, I met a local who was tending to his cows. When he learned that I was at my friend's farm, he became serious and asked if I was alone. When I confirmed it, he shook his head and told me to be careful. This worried me. That night, something seemed different. The noise cam, citios. I decided to stay another day to see if I was going crazy. I went back to the farm in the afternoon, but the feeling of discomfort did not leave me. That night, the noise came back louder and the knocking started again, more insistent. I was determined not to open it, but when I heard the voice again, it was angry. "Open this door!" The order was cold and my body reacted. I started walking towards the door as if something was controlling me. I even touched the doorknob, but before I could open it, a horrible scream echoed from outside. I backed away, trembling, not daring to look out the window. Something terrible was out there, and I knew that if I opened the door, I would not live to tell the tale. The scream stopped, but the presence remained. I don't know how, but I managed to get the phone and call my friend, asking him to come over. When he arrived the next day, the sun had already risen, and he found a destroyed version of me. I couldn't tell him about what had happened, but he understood when he saw the fear in my eyes. We left that morning, and I vowed never to return. That experience changed my life. Something ancient and dark lives in that land, something that is still searching, perhaps. I don't know exactly what happened, but I know that the interior holds secrets that should remain buried, and I was foolish to try to find out. Even after I returned to my normal life, the fear did not leave me. The experience left its mark on my mind. I would wake up at night thinking that someone was watching me. Nightmares of the female voice and the knocking on the door became part of my life. My home in the city, which had once seemed like a safe place, now seemed filled with anguish. One night, as I was trying to sleep, I heard a noise on the porch, similar to what I had heard on the farm. My heart raced and panic took hold of me. I got up slowly, trying to stay calm, and looked out the window. There was nothing outside, but the sound continued. The feeling of being watched grew. The next day, I decided to investigate. I also found references to an ancient book that was rumored to have strange practices and rituals that could explain what I had seen. The book was hidden in an ancient library, and no one knew where it was now. The search for the truth led me on a journey that seemed crazy. I became obsessed with understanding what had happened and finding answers that might never come. On a whim, I contacted a specialist in strange things, someone who had dealt with similar cases. He agreed to help me, but what we discovered was even more disturbing. During our investigation, the specialist told me that the farm was in a place where strange energies met. Such places attracted evil forces that wanted to manifest themselves in our world. It was as if the farm was a door to something much darker. The story of my friend's grandparents began to make sense. They were not just owners of a rural property, but part of something much larger and more sinister. The strange practices and rituals were not just superstitions, but attempts to control or calm the forces that inhabited the region. The site, with its isolation and ancient energy, had become the center of strange events that had spanned time. Even with all that, nothing had prepared me for what happened the last time I visited the site. I returned months later, determined to face whatever was there. I was armed with new information and ready for the truth. But when I arrived, I found the site completely abandoned. The house was in ruins, and the place felt even heavier than I remembered. The noise and banging had stopped, but the sense of unease was there. As I explored the rubble, I found an ancient altar hidden in one of the rooms. There were strange symbols on the walls and an ancient book on top of the altar, the same one that had been removed from the library. When I touched the book, a wave of cold enveloped me, and I felt as if something invisible was watching me. What I learned that day was terrifying. The book contained instructions for rituals that sought to open doors to other.